Going to the Garden, New York, the Mecca, the New York Knicks, the Bulls, half the old 2011 Bulls team. But the 2020-2021 New York Knicks, they're playing the Atlanta Hawks right now, currently down 1-2, and their main star, the most improved player in the NBA, who is usually their primary playmaker, has been kind of struggling drastically. Game 1, shot 6 of 23. Game 2, 5 of 16. Game 3, 2 of 15. And he's averaging, I guess, a little over 3 assists a game. He's had 4 assists twice and then 2 assists. So not the best performance from their most improved player, their star. So I guess this begs the question, should Derrick Rose take over duties as the primary playmaker for the Knicks? He has played really well this postseason. Some have said vintage. He doesn't like that term because it's not exactly vintage, but he has kind of turned back the clock to his old ways and being a dominant force in the NBA. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. Noel, do you think Derrick Rose should slide into that primary playmaker role for the Knicks?
So personally, I do. I think D-Rose would be good in the role. I think other people could also fill the role when he's not in. But my biggest reason is just Julius Randle has been the primary playmaker of this New York Knicks team. He has been struggling more than any other player in the playoffs so far. And I would, as the Knicks, I would try to give him the spark, help him out to just get some confidence back, get some buckets. And the best way I can think of to do that is not have him bring the ball up every single possession or most, and maybe get some off-ball movement, feed him in better situations, because he's a pretty good post player, but posting up from taking the ball up as a point guard is pretty tough, regardless of who your matchup is. But outside of that, I think I would say Derrick Rose, because I think he's been arguably the player of this series. I think he's got the momentum's on his hands. He's playing composed. Nothing's really shaking him. And although there might be better point guards in terms of passing ability, I do think right now, because of how he's been playing and how Randle's been playing, this would be a good move.
So I don't know if he should be made the primary playmaker, but I do think there should be more of a 50-50 split on who initiates their offense. Right now, there's just too much on Julius Randle, and the Hawks are kind of exposing Julius Randle. They're exposing his inability to shoot, and they're exposing just the fact that because he's not a true point guard and because they can scheme up a defense for him, they're exposing his inability to be able to consistently create his own shot and make jump shots. Like, a lot of times we see Julius Randle trying to bully people and he's not moving anywhere, and he gets stuck, about 8 feet away from the basket, and he's trying to spin and he's spinning into nothing. And obviously the shooting numbers are woeful, but he's not taking shots that he can consistently make. So of course they're going to be woeful. I mean, taking 9-foot turnaround jumpers and like weird floaters and running wild shots in the lane and step back contested 3-pointers and stuff like that, Julius Randle is not going to make shots like that. So I do agree with that. My big thing with Rose is just the fact that I don't think he can consistently get other people involved within their offense. Like, I've seen a lot of Derrick Rose in my life. Obviously, we're all from Chicago, so we watched the best of Derrick Rose. But then I'm a Pistons fan, so I watched a lot of Derrick Rose the last couple of years. And the thing with Derrick Rose is he's turned himself into this incredible mid-range jump shooter, and he's really savvy with his handle in terms of being able to create space and get his own shot, which is what we're seeing in this series, because it's not like the Hawks just have these incredible individual defenders. It's just that Derrick Rose is the only real player on the Knicks that can get his own shot and make it. And so my only problem is that I don't think Derrick Rose can consistently make plays for other players in terms of getting the offense, moving. It's more than just assisting the ball, making the right pass to get the ball moving and, swing it on to Reggie Bullock for an open three and stuff like that. So I think it should be a 50-50 split, especially because Randle has done such a good job in terms of initiating their offense all year. I think that obviously they need to help him and get going in terms of his scoring, because nobody else on this team can score besides Rose, and he struggled, but they still need his playmaking and his ability to initiate their offense.
So I'm kind of more with Nolan on this one, but I have a few things that weren't brought up that relate to the Hawks. So obviously Randall struggled, but I think the Hawks' wing defenders are actually pretty solid. Bogdanovich, Daniil Hunter is just locked down. Collins, and then obviously Clint Capella, say what you want about him on offense, but on defense, he's pretty solid. He was giving the Mutombo finger wag tonight. Gotta love that. And yeah, so like for Randle going against those guys, probably harder for him to score is like I'd say those guys match up pretty decently with him just size wise. And then also like the wing guys have a good ability to actually like, keep up with him and stuff and not be overpowered, which not all teams have like a 3 or 4 different guys that can actually do that on a roster. So kudos to them for that. And then also, who is the Hawks point guard and how is his defense? Well, from what I've been told, Trae Young is maybe the worst defensive point guard in the whole league. So if I'm the Hawks, I'm going high screen and roll with Derrick Rose, and I'm giving him a chance to make a play. Because here's why.
Mark Jackson loves that offense.
Yeah, he does. I mean, they have Taj Gibson, one of the best pick and roll bigs. I don't know if that's true, but they have bigs, and they can send them in the pick and roll, or even just have Derrick Rose ISO at the top. I don't care. Just get Trae Young in space and make him work on defense. He's obviously carrying the load on offense. He's really the only real playmaker on their offense, so that's already a big stress for him. But maybe exhausting him on defense wouldn't be a terrible idea either. And having, putting him in a situation where he's having to defend a lot of one-on-one and, almost draining his energy because, it's not easy, going on the perimeter and just locking down someone like Derrick Rose, who is shifty, who has a great handle. And I think the best criticism, Vish, that you brought up was the passing. And definitely there's times where it's not what you would like compared to other point guards like the Lucas or the Hardens or even the Trae Youngs, where they know who's open and when they are open just based on, getting past the first guy. But I still think in a vacuum, Rose is good enough to the point where he's not just completely missing obliviously wide open people time after time. And it'll still be better than what Randle can do because we've seen what Randle's been doing. And quite frankly, it's not good at all. It's incredibly inefficient. And Derrick Rose has had more assists than him, even without being the main guy. So I think that kind of goes to show that he's been just as good of a passer, and he maybe even needs to take on more of a burden. Now, he has shot a lot, so clearly he's had the ball in his hands, but I'd say more Derrick Rose and get those 2011 Bulls team back together. I mean, Thibodeau's been playing Rose 38 minutes a game. He's got, he's been prepping him up just like the old times. So I'd say more Derrick Rose.
Okay, so Noel, before you go real quick, one thing I did want to add is you're right about the Hawks defense. I feel like I diminished that a little bit. Yeah, like DeAndre Hunter is a beast. Bogdanovich is scrappy. Clint Capella has been a really, really good defensive player all year. All of those things are true. But I think the one thing is that, and we've seen in the modern NBA, is that if you have multiple guys who can handle the ball and create their own shot, they're going to be able to get their own shot no matter how many good individual perimeter defenders you have. And I think that's the biggest problem with the Knicks. They don't have other people. Like RJ Barrett was a 3rd pick in the draft. RJ Barrett has really struggled in this series in terms of being able to create space off the dribble and get his own shot. And he's also consistently struggled making shots. His lack of a shot, I think, has been exposed a little bit. Even though the numbers aren't terrible, I feel like visually it's just something you can't rely on just by the eye test. So I think that, obviously you're right. The Hawks do have a good defense, and they do have good individual defensive players. I just think it's more about the Knicks' inability to create and make shots than it is the Hawks' defense.
Yeah, what I would say is there was a point that Blake made in the spiel that I thought was just hitting the hammer on the head, is that regardless of who's taking the ball up, there is a player on the Hawks, who Blake mentioned, who is arguably the worst defensive player in the NBA. So if you have a struggling offense and you have the worst defensive player in the NBA on the other team, personally, I just put those 2 and 2, and I go after that player. And regardless of the players, the one strength of the Knicks is that they're so deep, in the sense they have a lot of different guys who can get to the hoop, who can get points. So whoever Trae Young is matching up against, I don't know exactly the exacts of who he's been matching up mostly, but get that person going, especially if your best player, Julius Randle, is not playing too well. But when it comes down to it, I do think that Derrick Rose should, whether it be majority or 50-50, should take the ball up a little bit more and give Julius Randle a chance to make plays without being the primary ball handler.
And maybe that's Emmanuel Quickly too, who's another guard on their team. Now he hasn't been getting the same minutes as those other guys, but he's someone who's a rookie who performed pretty well. And, maybe he's another guy that you say, just attack Trae Young, try to draw foul, hit your floater or whatever, and do it that way. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I think Derrick Rose has obviously been a part of the plan. He took 21 shots in game 3, which is a significant amount, but keep putting the ball in his hands and letting him play make, because clearly what he's been working on over the past few years that hasn't been shown in Detroit, that's now being shown and reunited with Tibbs is, it's something that needs to be put on notice.
Burks is another guy. I think Burks had like 27 or 28 in game 1 of this series. He's really savvy. He can get to spots. He needs to play better for them. I think that overall, I mean, they're not like a team with a primary playmaker, which is why I keep saying I'm hesitant to just say put the ball in Rose's hand. They're a team of where, you have Randle, who makes the plays. You have Rose, who makes a few plays for you on offense. You have Alec Burks. Usually RJ Barrett, I feel like he was really bad today, so maybe that's really what's sticking in my mind. But he can make some plays for your offense quickly, and it's just a variety of different guys, as Noel said, that can get to the hoop off the bounce. And the big problem is they haven't been able to make shots from outside, which has not enabled them to get to the hoop. So we'll see. I still can't just wrap around that Rose should just be their primary playmaker. I think they need to continue to do what they're doing. They just maybe need to maybe get Randle going off the ball early and then put him on the ball.
That I can agree with. I think they need to get Randle involved somehow. Maybe it's not as the primary guy, but maybe putting him in like pick and rolls or, getting him sets to get in more open shot or easier opportunities. But yeah, like him not showing anything after winning Most Improved is kind of a letdown to the whole state of New York, to be honest with you guys. So it's slightly disappointing, but hopefully he'll figure it out in these following games, and we'll see what they can do against the Hawks. I know they're down currently 1-2, but they still got a fighting chance. But any more thoughts?
All it for me. It's all I got.
It's all she wrote for me too.
Yeah.